Hello and welcome back to Down the Slope. We said that the last episode was going to be our last of the season, but we're back again anyway. And we've finally got a full house. Feels like the first time in a while I've said that. We've got you and Liam, Ryan, and G. G, we'll start with you. How we doing?
Not bad, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. I'm just fresh out the shower, went for a jog, so if I'm looking quite damp on the head, that is why. Ryan, how are you doing?
Life's good, bud. Thanks very much.
Good. And you and yourself?
Yeah, really good, mate. Real good.
Nice. And Liam, who absolutely hates when I start podcasts with "How are you? How are you?"
I'll give you the podcast answer. I'm doing very well, thank you. Doing very well.
Well, we've tweeted out a bit of a preview today. So essentially, last time out we kind of covered off the positional needs, and this time we've got a new director of football. So we thought it'd be fun to look at different targets that he may look for that you've probably not seen on the timeline. For the most part, this episode we won't be talking about the Jason Kerrs of the world. We'll be talking more niche than that, which is I think a bit fun. But before we get cracked into that, there's a few bits of breaking news that have went on in the Hibs world. First of all, leg one of the European tour is half confirmed. Greg, I'm going to hand over to you to break down the two potential opponents Hibs can play, because in your extensive scouting research, you've also looked into the Faroese team and the Andorran team. I'm not going to butcher their names. I'll leave that to you.
So basically, Andorran team seem pretty decent. The Faroese team are 14 games into their season. They've won 6, drawn 3, and lost 5. They score an average 2 goals a game, but they do concede 1.29. Their last 5 games have not been good. They have lost 3, drawn 1, and won 1. Basically the Faroese team's star player is a 37-year-old centre attacking midfielder, which is mental because the average age of the team is 24.2. So yeah, both managers are 37-year-old. Euan has been there since the 1st of September 2020, whereas Otger Canals is fairly new into the Andorran setup. He's only been there since the 20th of October 2022. So yeah.
So who's the preference then, Greg, from a football point of view?
From a competitive standpoint?
The Faroese team are definitely the preference because we'd scud them, to be honest. And it's not even close. The Faroese team play a 3-5-2, which is pretty flat, but the Andorran team play a 5-3-2 with wing backs. National team players, 2 for Faroe Islands, 1 for Andorra. Squad values like 995,000 for Faroese team and 2.89 million for Andorran team. And
there is definitely some
transfer market.
So both are artificial surfaces as well, which do not really suit anyone.
There's definitely some stat-loving Hibs fans that have just developed a heavy man crush on G there. So good job, G. That's your European first leg breakdown. For as far as Hibs get into Europe now, Greg will be breaking down opponent by opponent, and we look forward to
this a regular occurrence for every league game and everything. Greg breaks down every.
Yeah, perfect. Don't you worry. I'll do that for the first week before I get bored.
But otherwise, there's been a couple other bits of news in terms of the first team. So we'll crack on to it first. Liam, I'll go over to you first. Kyle McGuinness has left the club. Initial thoughts on that? Is it the right decision, and will it come back to bite us?
I think, like I said to you guys when the news first broke on Friday, I was a wee bit gutted about it, to be honest, and my feelings kind of not really gone away. I understand reservations all the fans had about his fitness record, I suppose, and his ability to stay for a lengthy period of time. But I think when he was on the park, he was one of our better, if not best, midfielders over the course of the last 3 years. So I am very, very disappointed that he's left. There is a niggling worry as well that he goes to Kilmarnock and all of a sudden gets over his injury problems. And to be honest, if he stays fit, he's Kelly's best player by a country mile, irrespective of who they bring in the summer. So I'm a wee bit gutted to see him go, particularly because I don't think it doesn't sound like we've recouped any fee for him either. We obviously just wanted to get him off the wage bill and clear the decks a little bit and make space for others. So I do understand the move. It's not a criticism of anyone at the club making that decision. I'm just very disappointed.
Yeah, no, I think it definitely goes with our best wishes. I don't think there's any ill will towards Kyle McGuinness. Obviously, I think he played in like 49 games and missed like 100 and something available to him whilst he was at the club. Sometimes
Ken was good though, Harry. Every
Wow.
silver cloud. We didn't have to hear people say anymore. When have we just got to cut our losses with Kyle McGuinness? We have cut our losses with him. I didn't have to hear that in another group chat.
There'll
but
be someone.
unfortunately, he's not going to get given the famous pay-as-you-play contract that has been branded around Hibs Twitter and Hibs media groups, or sorry, group chats for so long. So, goodbye, Kyle McGuinness. Hope you do the business, but not against Hibs. And then, secondly, Ryan, I'll come to you. I've not heard from you much on the pod so far. Adam Lafondra being brought in from the Australian League, used to rip it up in like EFL football. I think if we'd signed him about 7 years ago, we would have been absolutely buzzing out our nut. But are you still a bit excited for him coming in?
I'm excited to see what he brings to the squad in general. I don't think he'll start as many games maybe as what a marquee number 9 would, but I think he'll add something a little bit different in one way or another, whether it's character around the dressing room or, coming on when we're pushing to score a late winner or something like that. Yeah, I mean, as you say, 78 years ago, he was an absolute predator in the kind of Championship League One in England. So if he's got a wee bit of that nous left in him, then it might serve as well. So fingers crossed it works out.
And Euan, you tend to have the best memory of us. That's what I always say on the pod. In terms of Lee Johnson's infamous age groups, what does that leave us at for the squad at the moment? How many does he need to fill in to make that work?
Fuck's sake, what was it? I think it was 4884, wasn't it?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
I believe it was it 30 and over for the top one, or 35 and over?
I think it was 33 and over, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, so we've definitely got Stevenson, Marshall, and Lafondra at least in that category, and then I don't know, maybe Paul Hanlon might be sneaking into it.
Scratch
I've got
for
the
sure.
feeling it was 30, if not low 30. So you're probably hitting your quota there for that. But just forget I said that when I come to recommend all my signings later on.
But Euan, actually, we're going to keep rocking with you. So as I said, for the format of the episode, the guys have got 5 players. We're hoping that we've got a bunch of different players each. If it so happens that there's a couple of repeats, we'll just have to deal with that. But as mentioned, we're going to touch on players that we haven't discussed in the podcast before, just so you guys get a fresh perspective of the types of players that we'd like to bring in. Euan, we're going to hand to you first. It's up to you if you want to break it down player by player, or if you want to name dump them all and then break them down from there. So Euan, floor is yours, my friend.
Right, what I'll do so basically, I've got all the players here, but I've just got various tabs open up on my phone. So one at the top of the list here is a player that I recognised. He's had a good career in England. So actually, what I'll do first, I've looked at players that categories.
He's actually for a name,
caveat, right? So I've went for players that I think McDermott and Johnson would sort of be aware of in terms of either managed previously and then ultimately experienced players. The majority of my players are all sort of 20 or over. So I've went down sort of the opposite route that Hibs went last summer. The first player is Max Power, who appears to be leaving Wigan. I think Greg probably seen quite a lot of him when he was at Sunderland on loan. A name that sort of resonates, I think, with anyone that watched Gillette Soccer Saturday over the last sort of 5 to 10 years. A good, solid midfield option. In an area that we probably do need to strengthen in, especially with Kyle McGuinness moving on. That was the first one that stood out for me. He's out of contract at Wigan. Obviously, Wigan have got their financial issues. I'm not entirely sure where that stands on the retained list in May. He was one that they said they were still sort of in negotiations with. However, I can't imagine they're in a position to offer too much, given they're not paying their players. Next on my list is a player who is surprisingly only 30, but I think his days down south are probably limited after his last couple of stints. He's a striker. His last club was Watford, Britta Sombalonga. He's out of contract at Watford. I think, again, like I say, I went for sort of experienced enough players that I think the management team might know. I've got a feeling just from the sort of initial signs with the Lafondra signing, and also the fullback that's been linked tonight, that we are going to be going for a more experienced route, and maybe players that have got experience in British football. So that's generally where I've went. A player similar to Max Power, Nick Powell. I think he's leaving Stoke in this summer, and also his teammate centre back Aidan Flint, who played for Lee Johnson at Bristol City. He spent the second half of last season on loan at Sheffield Wednesday and played the majority of their games, so they might look to keep him. Obviously, they've been promoted to the Championship. And then I've got a couple of ambitious ones to sort of finish it, and then one that I don't think will go down very well. Archie Collins, a centre midfielder at Exeter City, was a standout last season. 45 games, attacking midfielder, capable sort of actually probably playing one step further forward. Scored goals for them last season. Liam's shaking his head, so Liam can talk about him as well, maybe.
I think he's more of a sitter than an attacking midfielder from bits that I've seen of him. But everything you said there is right. I mean, he's out of contract at Exeter. I've got him on the list as a hopeful. I think you'll have.
Yeah.
I think you'll have suitors. I think you'll have quite a lot of suitors, which might price us out. But I think he's a top player, and I think he's got the athleticism that you need to play that position in the league, particularly that we maybe lack in the deeper areas of midfield.
Yeah, I think if you look at Joe Newell, right, I think that is sort of the signings that is the type of player we need to be looking at. That's down south. He has, I mean, I've talked about enough athleticism in the middle of the park, and you'll be absolutely fine in this league as far as I'm concerned. There is obviously a standard, but athleticism can sort of see you through. An ambitious one, extremely ambitious. Tom Rogic never really set the world alight at West Brom. I don't know where that would sit. Probably still has suitors above our pay grade. I could see him potentially going off to like sort of Middle East, China, no, like somewhere a little bit closer to Australia, that sort of market where you've seen a lot of Australians go. And then my final shout is a player we're all very familiar with, but I don't think we've ever spoke about him as a transfer target on this podcast. He proved himself in terms of proving his fitness in League One last season. I think he's the perfect number 6. We've seen him play as the perfect number 6 at Hibs before, and that's Dylan McGeoch. I think he's proved himself to be fit at Forest Green, and we know what he's capable of. A player that can get stuck in and play the ball. The silence is definitely.
I was all on board, and you got to the last one. Right, guys, open to the floor, and then you can take a couple of questions if you want. I'll start off the questions. If anybody else wants to chime in after, go for it. Brett Assombalonga.
I have one more. Sorry. Centre back.
How many is this?
Sorry,
is this like maybe finish up?
You start off with a Bible. That's why you're picking each player.
Sorry, my final one is another centre half. Played in Scotland before. Leon Balogun. I actually thought he was a standout when he was at Rangers, to be honest.
Who's he at now?
He was a free agent after leaving Queen's Park Rangers.
Fair enough. But all right, Assombalonga, talk to me. What impact would he have on the Hibs squad? What type of striker do you think? What elements would he bring that we're missing at the moment?
I think he's experienced. Obviously, we've got that in Lafondra, but at 30, he knows where the back of the net is. Only a couple of seasons ago, he scored double figures in the Championship for Middlesbrough. Generally, I don't want to stereotype, but from what I've seen of him, he has always been that sort of powerhouse centre forward. I think Hibs want to play with width and get the ball into the box, and that sort of mould of a striker is where I think will thrive at the club just now. I know Kevin Nisbet was really adept last season at dropping in deep, but I think someone that can get in behind nice, as we've seen that at the start of the season, sort of getting Euan and Boyle in behind quickly. So a real sort of threat that can also do that from the middle of the park, I think, is what would thrive for us this season.
Have you seen Assombalonga recently?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I hadn't seen him at Watford. I think he only played 12 games and he spent time in Turkey. So obviously there is it is a little bit more historical. But I think you've seen it in the past where players can come back from poorer spells.
What was he having done in Turkey?
Not a lot, or a lot of other stuff, but not a lot on the pitch.
Got his teeth done.
He's a big boy. If I'm honest, he's not going to be one to get him behind. I think he's maybe more of a 6-yard box poacher, which maybe works out okay with the service you get. But yeah.
I mean, he scored 16 goals in 50 appearances in Turkey, and then went to Watford last season and hardly featured, to be honest.
He ruined his career going to Middlesbrough because he was on fire at Forest. They signed him from Peterborough. He was really good at Forest and then left and not really been seen to do much since.
like I say, there's obviously they're all lower league English players that are out of contract. I had a type that I was looking for, and I don't know if we're going to spend too much in the way of transfer fees. Obviously, we've made quite a big outlay on Euan, so I do think that market's where we're going to be shopping a lot this summer, given McDermott's and Johnson's knowledge down there.
Yeah, and finally, before we move on to the next person, unless anybody else's questions, if you could take any of those players as a priority, who would you be snapping up?
Leon Balogun.
I really like Balogun, to be fair. I do really like him. He's quick, very quick.
Leon Balogun, probably. I think he did have injury problems at Rangers, but yeah, probably Balogun and McGeoch. Genuinely, I'd be absolutely comfortable with Dylan McGeoch coming back to Hibs, having proved his fitness. I think we know his quality.
Well, on that happy note, in terms of a Scottish Cup winner, Dylan McGeoch, Liam, we're going to come to you second. Give us your, well, if you want to start with a Bible on why you've picked each player, followed by an excess of 3 players, then feel more than free, my man.
Like you, and I think I've tried to hone in on realistic targets. So basically, I think everyone I'm going to talk about is out of contract at the end of the season. So I've been scouring the internet, as we all do from time to time, to come up with a wee short list of players. And to be honest, a lot of these guys are going to be names that maybe are not familiar to the listeners. So I'll try and add a wee bit of colour to each of the names as we go. Let's start off with maybe a slightly more familiar one to some folks. So George Johnston, who has spent the last season at Bolton, came through the system at Liverpool, centre back, still relatively young, pretty good age, I think it's 24, 25, something like that. Left-sided, played a number of times for Scotland under 21s, which is where I've seen most of them play. I think he can play left back as well as centre half, albeit I think primarily we'd be looking at him as a centre half. Good height, physically strong. I think he's still, in some respects, still got quite a lot to learn. Maybe still quite raw. But I do think we need to look at that sort of left-sided centre half position to provide some sort of future proofing with kind of Paul Hanlon and his advancing years, as you like to talk about, Harry. In terms of centre midfield, I've got a couple of more, and I am only going to do 5 here. I'm not going to do 25 like Euan.
I got on 6.
Mate, it was no danger.
It
was
at
6,
least 7.
Maybe
at least
with a
7.
caveat at the start, I think it was about 15. The next one's a player that I'm pretty confident most of you won't have heard of. Centre midfielder by the name of Lasse Vigen Christensen, who came through the system at Fulham. He spent some time in Denmark, Belgium, and then gone back to Denmark. He's played incredibly. I was looking at his Wikipedia earlier. He's played 38 times for Denmark under 21s. I think I've ever seen a player play 38 times for under 21 team. Never played for the.
Hanlon must be pushing that, by the way.
No far off. He's as a midfielder, he's sort of maybe more of a kind of a playmaker in his sort of style. I think his numbers perhaps don't kind of jump off the pages as a goal scorer, but he could potentially play a little bit further forward. His best goal scoring seasons actually came really early on in his career, which probably suggests to me he's maybe being used a little bit deeper. But having watched a wee bit of him here and there, and picking up bits and pieces as I can on YouTube, I think he could potentially be an option for us in centre midfield. 28 years of age, because I know we like to talk about the age of players. The next one is Ivar Fossum, also a centre midfielder, Norwegian. Probably an 8 or a 10 in terms of trying to pigeonhole him into one position or another. Again, he's out of contract, which I think is a real key thing for us. He's been playing for Danish side Aalborg, and his contract's expiring at the end of this month. He's spent a bit of time in Germany, playing with Hannover 96, played at a really good level. I think when I did the research of him, apparently he's really synonymous with their players of Football Manager. Apparently he's still really good in Football Manager, gettable. But centre midfielder with what looks to be, to me, a lot of energy and a really good engine. So potentially one for us. Next one, taking me back to my youth, and I think most of you all have heard of this name, but you've probably not heard it for a while. So I still do watch quite a lot of Serie A. One of my favourite players going back a few years, a centre forward by the name of Mattia Destro, who played youth football for Roma, spent a bit of time at Genoa. He's basically bounced around various different Serie A clubs. He is without a club as of the end of June. He's was at one point, albeit it was a long time ago, in Italy international. He's played for some of the biggest clubs in Italy, but he doesn't currently have a club. I recognise that it's very left field and it's very, very unlikely before anyone jumps on it, but he's not playing at the moment and he's not with a club. He's 32 years of age. I still think, based on wee bits and bobs I've seen of him this season, that he could do a job still. And he is an absolute, like, he's a finisher and he's a unit. I think he would do very well in this country. And then fifth and finally, I've got a few that are sitting here. Do you know, I'm just going to go for a really safe one to finish. Or should I go for a rogue one or a safe
Go
one?
wild card, man.
Yeah,
Wild card.
just talk to 7 so I feel better.
No.
I've got 8, so knock yourself out, Liam.
No.
Right.
Liam, name drop them both. Go for it.
My final one, my fifth and final one, is a player called Georgi Shakfatadze, a Georgian centre midfielder. He didn't actually play in the game on Tuesday night, but he did play in the game against Cyprus. A kind of attacking midfielder who is currently, he's actually still under contract, but he is currently contracted again. Spent last season on loan at Slovan Bratislava. He's a Georgian international. He's a goal scorer from midfield. When I was looking for goal scoring midfielders across Europe, there was not a huge number of midfielders that score lots of goals. This guy does have a track record of scoring goals, and I do think it's a vitally important thing for us to add to the team this season. So he was my bit of a wild card shout.
Nice.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
And then same question we gave to Euan, because the more niche, the more difficult it is to ask questions. Out of those players, who would kind of be your priority for the club to go for if you had the choice?
Oh mate, like if we could sign Mattia Destro, that would be like it would be incredibly lovely nostalgia for me, taking me back to about 10 years ago when I wanted him to do amazing things at Roma, and it didn't quite pan out for him. But no, I think it would be him, just purely on the vibes. I think he would do well here as well, of course. I think all those players would do well. There were some guys that I looked at who, when I looked into them maybe a little bit deeper, I thought it would be great for Hibs, but actually, I think financially, a lot of the players now, and even some of the maybe less discovered leagues in Europe, are just out of our reach now, because access to databases and scouting systems mean that there's no really very many players now that our top clubs don't know about. So going and picking up a gem from the Slovakian Premier League, for example, might have cost you 250 grand, and now costs you 5 million. There's one striker in particular, I think Rangers have been linked with, who I was knee deep in us signing, and then saw that Rangers were financially ruled out of it, and I was like, well, I think that probably takes us out of the equation too. So it's tough. It's harder than you think for these clubs, you know.
Can I just ask? I played it very safe, obviously. Like my list was very much Brexit means Brexit. Last summer we maybe criticised Hibs for signing players that, you know, weren't accustomed to the league and stuff like that, and culture and all that. Do you think that we need another summer like that?
I think a lot of that owed to the fact that we were trying to sign young potential in the hope that it would develop, rather than just signing proven talent. And I've spoken to you about 2 28-year-olds, a 32-year-old, a 30-year-old, and a 24-year-old. So I think we're talking about players who are maybe a bit more developed. I also think there is something for me around going back to signings we've made in the past, like maybe guys like Frank Sozzi, where you've gone on and signed somebody of a really high quality who's going to completely lift the standards at your club. I think would be a signing that we should look at if we can make it. And I think Lafondra is the first attempt to do that. But if I'm being honest, Lafondra's had a great career, but he's not played at a great level.
Yeah.
Somebody like Mattia Destro, obviously not specifically him, but somebody like him would, I think, be an incredible signing for the club in terms of just someone to come in and it's not necessarily bringing younger players on, but just helping them understand what it takes to be a really top pro.
But I'd ask this question as well, because I know Greg's scoured every continent of this world.
Oh, right. I thought you were following that with another question.
No, sorry, mate.
No, that's okay. Sorry, I zoned it for a sec. Because after getting lambasted, don't worry, Liam picked up with me in the group chat afterwards for criticising a certain Lewis Stevenson. Please correct me if I'm wrong, and if this turns out I am wrong, I'm going to look really bad. But I'm quite confident I'm correct. It looks like Hibs have pretty much revealed that we are signing a new left back, Jordan Obita from Wycombe Wanderers. Is currently got a clock whilst it's panning the back of his head. So guys, Jordan Obita, left back. I cannot lie and say I know anything about him. Greg, Liam, you are typically my EFL guys. Don't worry, Ryan, you're my Ireland guy. But can either of you guys talk to Jordan Obita at all?
Oh, all I know about him is he was very highly rated at one point at Reading, but his career to me has passed me by a wee bit, to be honest. Greg might know more, but I know that he was certainly a name that when he first broke in at Reading was very highly touted. I think he was probably a winger to begin with, but sounds like he's playing left back now. He's playing a little bit deeper, which maybe explains why his numbers have dropped off. But
yeah, I mean, I had a left back on the list that wasn't him. So yeah, I'm not overly impressed with the stats for last season, but you never know. Might come up and be a player.
There's like a filter you can do on Transfer Market, and you can look at managers and look at all the players they've managed and used. So like part of my scouting that I'd done, I looked at players Lee Johnson that managed and players Brian McDermott that managed. I don't think he came up as one that McDermott managed. There was a few other players that I didn't put on my list, but is that just the route we're going? If you played for Reading, I've signed.
Well, I'm expecting us to sign Joby McAnuff, Casper Gotts, and Kim Cherisham very shortly.
Kim Cherisham was a player.
Gee, what was that player called that they had who was absolutely rapid that played on the wing? He was like a Senegalese or a Mali international or something. He tore up the league one season. He was absolutely unreal in the championship, and then did they get promoted? I mean, or did he sign for a promoted team and he was absolutely stinking?
I swear he always had like the thick sweatband on his wrist.
Sweatband on his wrist, aye. He was lightning quick. He played on the wing, but then I think they realised he was that quick they could just knock the ball over the top and play him up front, and he would get him behind the defenders, and his name escapes me. Sorry, not making good radio, Harry.
No. I found it interesting. I googled, and I think the guy's a bit too recent to be the one who you mentioned, so I'm not going to say his name. But thank you, Liam, for those players. And again, so when you guys were looking up, were you kind of looking up position priorities, or were you just kind of looking at the best players that you would want us to target?
I focused on centre back, centre midfield, and striker. I did look for a goalie, but I felt with the Boric signing, which he was imminent, it probably wasn't worth my while to look. So I looked at centre back, centre midfield, and striker.
Yeah,
I still looked at a goalie, and I've got one on the list. I specifically looked at a mix. For example, the youngest player on my list is 17, and the oldest is 30. So there's a fair mix in between.
Oh, and we love a cliffhanger to get you excited. So we're going to hold G for a second, and we're going to hand the table over to Ryan, who seemed adamant that we must have 5 players and 5 players only. So I'm looking forward to him keeping to the brief.
Well, I expected it to be 3 to start off with, and then it was 5, and Euan just kind of threw the script in the bin and went with 7. So
Liam found a random skill register and just started listing off names, man. Oh.
I've just went with a real mixed bag. I think the strength in identifying and scouting players probably lies with other people within this podcast. So the players I've got in here are probably very unrealistic. So my first player won the World Cup in the summer with Argentina. No, I'm just kidding. Didn't really.
You had me going there. I was like, oh, Ryan, let's just move this on.
So in terms of like age and position, I've just went for guys that I either like the look of or I like their numbers. So the first one on the list is Mark Sykes. 25-year-old, recently been in the Republic of Ireland international squad, played over 100 league games at Oxford. He's been at Bristol for the last 2 years. Strong, athletic, can play in a number of positions, centre midfield, right midfield or right back, chips in with goals from midfield. As I said, I think I repeated myself there. But he's probably not the most realistic of targets. Obviously, being in the Championship, it would probably command quite a big fee and a big wage.
Just confirming that's Bristol City then.
Yeah, Bristol City. It's just as well you said that, because I've got a Bristol Rovers player as well, who I'm going to name just now. Aaron Collins, left winger. I'll be honest with you, I don't know an awful lot about him, but his stats are pretty good. So he's 26-year-old. He did bounce about the leagues a little bit. Came through at Wolves, played League 2, League 1, back down again. But he seems to have kind of found his level there. I don't know if that's something that he can transfer into the Scottish League. He's played 91 games for Bristol on the left wing, and he scored 32 goals, which for a left winger is quite impressive. Had 11 assists last season. So in terms of goal involvement, it's pretty good.
I've got League 2.
Pardon? I think Bristol Rovers are League 1.
League One this season,
Yeah.
League Two the season before.
I think they're
He
League One.
also would have seen off Jasper and got him recalled ultimately.
Yeah. So I quite like the numbers. He's obviously somebody that's quite direct and forward thinking. I've got a goalkeeper as well. I've got a guy that I work with that's a big Bolton fan, so he's been on and on and on about this guy like for the last season and a half. James Trafford. He's been on loan from Man City. Huge guy, 6'6". He's actually broke a couple of records at Bolton. And when being 20 years old, I know a lot of people say, well, why don't we just develop Murray Johnson? But this guy's played 2 full seasons of senior football already at a fairly competitive level. He kept 25 clean sheets last season, which is a heck of a lot. That's like half the games he would have played in. And he was Bolton's Young Player of the Year as well. So he's obviously highly thought of. And I would hope that Lee Johnson would use that City group connection to kind of get in there. So I've got a youngster, a 17-year-old left winger from Cliftonville, Sean Moore, very highly rated. He's been linked with a number of moves to the English Premier League, so he's got a lot of potential. I think he'll go to the very top of the game. I think Greg and Liam have probably seen him at some point over the course of the season. Very exciting prospect. Can play with both feet. He played 31 games last season as a 17-year-old in a men's team, which is quite impressive. He is a skinny wee guy, but he can put himself about when it matters. He can play left back as well, so quite versatile. They get the number one guy on the list for me is more a number 6. Obviously with Kyle McGuinness leaving, we kind of are a wee bit lighter in the midfield area, so we need numbers. We needed numbers before he was shipped out. So the name of this guy is Patrick Berg, Bodo Glimt. You would have seen him probably play against Scotland for Norway. Not that he had his greatest game against Scotland, but 25, 8 seasons at Bodo Glimt, and there was a short spell at Lens in between that. Very comfortable on the ball, neat and tidy, tenacious, tireless, kind of looking for a player that can dictate and direct the tempo of the way that we play, and I think he would be the ideal player to do that. He's very well equipped to play in this league. He's played in Europe a number of times, but again, I think he might be just out with our reach in terms of fee and wages. He's a very good player.
What do you suppose, what do you suppose a player at Bodo Glimp's on? If you were to, do you think there'd be a huge scale or?
Be on a massive salary, but I think it would for them to leave would require a massive salary to tempt them to go. I don't think they'll be on a remarkably greater amount than they're on at Hibs, despite the European money. But then I think it's all relative. Like cost of living in Norway, as I understand, it's really high in comparison to Scotland. So I don't know. I think it would be Berg himself would be a very difficult player to prize away from Bodo Glimt. I think there's a reason that he stayed there, but I think he would be an amazing signing if you could get him.
Was it Bodo Melkerson came from?
Yeah.
It was.
Didn't play for the first team.
Oh yeah, but it was just.
And then what the Irish boy? I've forgotten his name. Apologies.
Sean Moore.
He's
on G's list, definitely. Like I seen for G's body language.
Nah, he's not. Honestly, he's not. He's not. I knew Ryan would take him.
I think
Ryan has Sean Moore posters on as well, but
Sean Moore's got Ryan Melville posters on his wall, man.
Exactly, our flying winger.
I'm sure he does, mate.
But with players like that and Evan Ferguson, I think it's fair to say that the League of Ireland's a league that we should definitely be keeping tabs on at the moment. I think there is a lot of untapped potential there. And then you guys watch it a lot more than me, but I know when me and Euan talk about it, we typically compare it to the Scottish Championship, and I think that particularly the lower half of the league, I think that's a fair comment. But the teams that are pushing for the title and stuff and pushing in the upper half of the league, it definitely seems like there is quite a lot of good players there.
I only compare it against that because that's what these three have.
No, they're not. I would say the North of Ireland league's probably on an equivalent to the Scottish Championship. However, the League of Ireland, which is obviously Southern Ireland, is a pretty decent level. There's teams in there that could probably fare fairly well in this league. Probably Shamrock Rovers, Dundalk, teams like that would maybe finish top 6 or thereabouts. In my opinion, I mean, they play in Europe. Shamrock Rovers had some okay results in Europe last season, so I think it'd be fair to say that they're a higher level than the Scottish Championship.
The comparison's really hard to draw because we've done this podcast and we talked about this before, and Sligo Rovers, who are shite in the League of Ireland, not Motherwell at Europe last season.
Very shite.
So it's not as arbitrary as that. Sean Moore's a player for me. I've not seen him anywhere near as much as Ryan. He's a player who would be an amazing signing, but I think he would be a couple of years off playing 30 games a season for Hibs. So I think he'd be an investment for the future. I think Hibs equivalent. Think Oscar McIntyre got the ability, but has he physically ready to go and play in our league? I don't know. Probably not.
I totally agree with it. It's just I really like the look of him, and I think he's got the potential to go really high in the game. So I couldn't not add him to the list there.
Sorry, I don't want it's not League Island podcast, but so is that league not too dissimilar to ours then, in the sense that maybe like a Shamrock and a few others are sort of like Celtic and Rangers, where they're that much above the rest, or is the gaps not that equivalent? Obviously,
I wouldn't say there's a big. I don't think there's many leagues where there's a big gap between the top two and the rest, like it is in Scotland at the minute. I think it's a fairly competitive league, to be honest with you. And then towards the end of the season, you might get somebody kind of running away with a 9-point lead or something like that. But throughout the course of the season, you feel that most teams can beat each other, other than maybe the bottom 2 or 3.
right. Okay.
The last decade has been Shamrock Rovers, but it's not been dominance in the way that Celtic or Rangers dominate the league. They've been the dominant team over the last decade, 15, 20 years, probably over history. I wouldn't really say financially there's a massive chasm between them and the rest. It's just been the best run football club, I think, in League of Ireland. But it has changed hands. I mean, there's been times where St Patrick's Athletic have been right up the top, and I wouldn't really say dominant, but have been very strong. They've struggled over recent years. Times where Shelbourne have done really well. There's not. I don't think there's.
Not like one dominant force, really.
Nah, not really.
No.
Not really.
Just
It's actually quite an exciting
Rovers
league.
drew with Ghent in Europe last season, and then Ghent played West Ham. West Ham went on to win it. So they're pretty decent against European teams.
I think, as the two guys say, it is very hard to draw comparisons though in football leagues, isn't it? I mean, where do you draw the comparisons from to start off with?
Yeah,
because you'd look at some of the Shamrock Rovers squad, and you would probably turn over the last year's guys that played in Scotland, and you would probably turn your nose up at having them at Hibs. In all honesty, you'd look at them and go, "Nah, we don't want them at Hibs." But when you look at what they've done as a club and as a team, both in Europe and on a domestic front, you'd have to say they are a very, very well run football club. But again, you'll come back to being in Dublin.
But ladies and gentlemen, the moment that we've all been waiting for, especially us on the podcast, because I'm putting all the pressure on, because G has been talking a game about how good his scouting has been, how in depth, and how he has scoured every inch of this continent and continents beyond. Greg, the floor is yours. Let's go through this beautiful shortlist you've drawn up.
A bit of an anticlimax, but I've got 7 others that are pretty decent, I would say. But the first one's our goalkeeper, Jed Steer. He's currently a free agent after leaving Villa. He won one promotion from Aston Villa in 2019. It was pretty pivotal, especially in that semi-final penalty show against West Brom away. Plenty of experience, played a lot of games of football. So obviously Max Boric is looking close, but that is definitely one that I would probably look at. The first of the wild ones, really. I don't really want to butcher this name, but Apostolos Konstantopoulos at Beershot. He's 25-year-old, 20-year-old, 6'3", right-footed. Played 25 appearances so far this season, with 1 assist. He's a big lad. He's strong in the air, strong in the tackle, can pass out for the back. Very competent at playing out for the back, I would say. So he's definitely on that list.
I'm pretty sure he also owns EasyJet Airlines as well.
Very good, Liam.
Wait, Greg, just before we move on, can you repeat his name one time, and Euan, can you then try and spell it?
Apostolos Konstantopoulos. It's probably one of the easier Greek names to say, to be honest.
I googled it based on Greg's pronunciation. It came up right away, so he's got it spot on, to be fair.
You've been practicing,
in the mirror all week.
At least 100 times that, surely.
He's also very aggressive, which you needed a centre-half in this league, so he's definitely one for Ian Gordon to note down his notepad. The second player has played under Lee Johnson previously, has over 40 full caps for his country. left-footed centre-half, can also play left-back. Came through the ranks at Juventus. Horder Magnusson, he was at Bristol City under Lee Johnson. Currently at Panathinaikos, 1 year left in his deal, so not sure how feasible. But plenty of experience in the game, and obviously on the national stage as well. The left back I had was Connor Grant from Plymouth. Came through the ranks at Everton. Free agent now, can play left back, left wing back, and centre midfield. Only made 11 appearances last season with 1 goal. He is versatile, he's got good pace, and he's a set piece specialist as well, from what I believe, from my digging about. So obviously it looks like we signed Obita, but I thought he would be a good option, especially as a free.
They've just confirmed Obita, by the way. That's like a minute ago. Yeah.
Here we go.
How many years?
They've not tweeted like the article. It's just like the wee video, and it says Jordan Obita as a Hibby. So by the end of the pod, we'll have it.
Perfect. This player is a centre mid, or centre defensive mid. About to be a free agent. Last club was Lecce, and it's John Biakengren.
Sorry, can you say that again? Sorry.
Yeah, and if you're going to cough, please do go on mute. Greg, back to
Aye,
you to
mate.
beat
I
that
thought I
name.
was on mute. I'm really sorry.
It's John Bjorkengren. Played the second half of the season on loan at Brescia. 19 appearances, 2 assists. More of a deep lying player, in the Jimmy Jagger role, if you want to call it that. But he's definitely one that I would be looking at. He's 24, pretty young. Would say he's probably still yet to peak Swedish under-21 international. Really, the one I would absolutely love us to sign, above all else, is Pontus Dabo from BK Häcken. 17-year-old, 6'1", can play cam, centre mid, right wing, left wing, and centre forward.
Wow.
So far this season, he's got 10 appearances and 2 goals. It is his breakthrough season, really. He did play the sort of tail end of last season, but fairly small sample size, but definitely got a huge ceiling, and I reckon he will go to the top of the game. So Pontus Dabo, remember the name. And my final player, if anyone still cares or is listening, is Ivan Bozic, a 26-year-old right-footed striker, last season in the Slovenian league. 207 appearances in his career, 47 goals, 9 assists, which averages a goal every 4.4 games.
Fantastic,
More of
G.
a poacher than anything else.
Fantastic.
I did enjoy the dramatic pause to leave us lingering for the next player after each player. That was enjoyable. And just to say, I think the only player I've actually watched from there was Steer, the one that was at Aston Villa. I think that's a very good shout. Obviously, if Max Boric is imminent, probably a bit high on the wage bill, but in terms of a player I think would transition straight to first team football at Hibs, I think that'd be a great shout, to be honest. It was mentioned by one person that sent a comment in, but yeah, I don't think that was anticlimactic, Greg. I thought from what you'd explained and described, I thought you put forward a pretty good shortlist there of players we could target.
I think
McDermott. What's that?
Ryan, you go first.
I was just going to say, I think Brian McDermott would do himself a big favour by getting Greg in to help him out. Like,
Hey, and Liam, you were saying?
I would agree, but I'm biased.
I googled all the players as Greg was saying, and I'm all in on John Bjorkengren. Major Melker Hallberg vibes. He's a Swedish youth international who's gone to Italy, not had the best time of it, and is just looking for a home. And if ever there was a club that's a good home for top quality Swedish centre midfielders, it's Hibernian Football Club. So get him in. He's not quite as handsome as Hallberg, but he's no bad. So sign him.
Yeah, if you're from that part of the world and you want a hug and a football club to play for, Liam's arms are wide open and Hibernian Football Club is there for you. Greg, one thing I did notice, quite a lot of syllables in the name that you were saying there. Was that an intentional thing to get some catchy songs?
I'm fucking knackered, to be honest.
Hibs mums and dads,
that's
like fuming. Going to cost them a fucking fortune in the club shop.
Nah, listen, I've done due diligence, and I think these players would be good for the club. But
certainly have.
I'm not in charge of recruitment. So
I think we have to be honest here. Like, I think a lot of the time, well, most weeks we show up here and fuck knows what we're going to talk about. But Greg has been prepping that list for well over a week at least. When we first started talking about it, I know I was still away, and I've been back a week tomorrow. So that has been a long time coming.
I started the list on the 15th of June. So there's a week.
And just before we move on to some listener inputs, if you could all give one player you would sign that you didn't say, and then we can move on. I'll leave it a couple seconds to pick. Euan nodded there, so we're going to come to you first. You nodded, man.
Acknowledgement, mate.
Sorry.
No, I will say player that I didn't say. Are we still going by the same rule? Sorry, that because I would
just one player that either Liam, Ryan, or Greg said. If you can't remember one, that's fine.
Winger,
we can come back.
No, the winger from Bristol Rovers.
Yeah, one of Ryan's ones. So Ryan, we come to you. Was there anybody that was mentioned that you would take?
Yeah, the Swedish midfielder that Greg mentioned sounds like a bit of a baller, like, and if he's got a good haircut, it's always a bonus. So yeah, Greg's absolutely done a power of scouting. So fair play to him, like.
Can we just challenge you in it for a wee second on his accepted mediocrity and inverted commas there on? If you could take any of the players that I mentioned, all the exotic players, and he wants a guy for League One in England.
League One.
League One. West. League One.
I fucking forgot. I fucking forgot all that, but I was like,
talk about lacking ambition, man.
So that you're pulling me up for fucking mentioning them too, then.
Mate, we think Martin Boyle could have got a game for fucking Championship Dundee. James can come for anywhere.
Right. He was mentioned, but not
put forward as a number one target.
Not put forward. I think Jimmy Kebby could still do the job for us. Jimmy Kebby. Nah, I'm joking. It'd be one of Greg's wild shouts, to be honest. Nah, actually, no. Ryan's Patrick Berg shout. It's never going to happen, but Patrick Berg. I mean, he would improve our team massively based on who plays that position at the moment.
Harry, you got any shouts? Any of ours or of your own?
In terms of in terms of who was it? I was just about to say one. You know what? I love a journeyman striker. If they've not journeymaned in the English Football League, I'm all for it. So Greg's one that he mentioned at the very last one, I'm not even going to attempt the name. I thought he sounded like a bit of Hibs. And then Liam said one as well. I forgot his name. Destro. I love a bit of that. Like a striker that scored any striker that scored 100+ goals outside of the UK. I love it when Hibs sign them, just because you get so many highlight reels and that on YouTube. So yeah, Greg, you end us off. Wait, did you give us one? I'm losing my mind.
No, but I would have to say Berg as well. To be fair, boy's phenomenal.
I'm not going to take offence to the fact everyone else got a player named except me.
You named that many. Like it would be too difficult to choose.
Dylan McGeoch.
Dylan McGeoch. There you go. We'll bring him back.
Ivor Fossum's a player, by the way.
Yeah, I think I've went more realistic than anyone else. I'll be honest.
And why do you think we didn't pick your player?
all my guys are out of contract. Like I was saying to you, they're out of contract.
Fossum's a player. So, Liam shout with Fossum. He is a player.
Mate, Matthias Destro played last season at Empoli with Liam Henderson, and he was hardly getting a game. Liam Henderson was at Hibs not that long ago. I don't think it's out of the question. I know it's a bit of work, but mate,
so you're saying on Twitter
for the famous Hibernian.
You got
spread the word.
Sorry guys, I've just noticed that Greg's blood pressure looks really, really high. I want Hibs to sign Liam Lindsay. All right. Look, G looks fine now. Thank God. Sorry, I just had to get that out there.
Harry, I'll just add, Obita's deal is a 2-year deal, and Hibs have an option to extend it for a 3rd season. Is what the club have just tweeted.
Nice, good bit of stability at left back, competition for Louis. And yeah, anybody got any happy enough? I think left back was a position that we said we'd probably be happy with getting another player in for.
Yeah, how old is he again? Sorry, Euan?
29.
29. I'll be honest, it wasn't a priority position for me at all. Being totally honest, really wasn't. But I'm sure he'll do well, and I'm sure Lewis Stevenson will still see him off.
And when we're all sunburnt in Andorra and he scored his 6th goal, I think we'll all be fully in love with the boy anyway. But yeah, just before we end off today, we've got quite a few listener inputs, but we're not going to touch on all of them because a few of them ignored our request to not mention players that we've already mentioned. But Gavdick said, "Are we still in for McGarth?" Means McGrath. Honestly, not sure about him. Was class at St Mirren but didn't show at United. Any links with us signing a starting striker? Is there any strikers that were linked? I don't really think so. There's rumours of Kukurevich coming back, but apart from that, not really. So we've got
a theory that there is someone coming though that I shared with you in the group chat earlier. Deutsch wore number 9 last year. I don't think anyone else did, but in the images the club tweeted out today, he's kitted out in the number 23. And I backed it up a little bit. Joe Newell had 11, Jago had 6. Like, you know what I mean? They all had their numbers on. And
Jago was 14 last season.
14.
Sorry, I thought he plays the 6. Sorry, but they all had their numbers of the squad number on, and Deutsch had 23. So maybe
Adam Lafondra took the number 9 shirt. Bold.
No, he's number 19.
Fair enough.
So just
attention to detail, young Ryan.
Maybe there's something in something in the works, hopefully, because it is required. It definitely is required.
But then Coach Pete said, I'd love for us to pick up a genuine, how did we get him veteran player like a Sozzi or an Archibald? Bring a bit of box office. Credentials must include played for a big Euro team and be over 30. Anybody jump out? I was going to say N'Golo Kante for a laugh, but he's away to make like £350,000 a minute. So I don't think he'll be near Hibs. That's the only thing. I think in the modern day, if Sozzi was on the table, he probably would have went off to Saudi Arabia or something. To be honest,
I've paid Sozzi good money.
Good money. We're talking like 20k for Hibs would be ridiculous money. If Saudi Arabia come at the end of your career and they offer you like 300,000 a week, you can't really say no.
I think Liam's shout fits the mold, no? The strike.
100%.
Destro would. 100%.
Yeah,
I'm going to start a Twitter campaign. I think I've just
as soon as you ask the question,
why not do it again? Why not do it again, mate?
First thing that jumped to mind as soon as you asked the question was Destro. He was an absolute weapon on Football Manager as well back in the day. He scored hundreds, man. Great shout.
Billy, King of the North, who we all love, completely disregarded the questions, just started naming all the transfer targets that we're currently linked with. Said, love to have Greg Docherty, but think he's beyond our price range. When Johnson first arrived, he spoke about bringing wingers that would excite the fans. Someone like Mikey Johnston would be a good start. And then he also said he'd be happy with CJ Egan Riley, Fish, and Mikola Kukurevich back. Mikey Johnston, not someone that we've actually spoken about on the pod, I don't think. Probably at some point when we played Celtic and he got a 5-minute run at the end. But Greg, come to you. I've not heard you in a sec. Mikey Johnston, would that be a good addition to the squad?
Before he joined Guimarães, I would have said no. I'm sure that's where he went to. But after that, I think he done fairly well there. Now playing international football, I would be all over it, to be honest. Needs to leave Celtic because he's finished there. Like, there's no future for him at all there. Needs to leave. I think Hibs would be a really good option for him. Very, very pacey, very direct.
Yeah, you're right.
Maybe spoke about him last summer. I do. I think we maybe did, and I think the consensus at the time was no. For me, I would stick with no. Still having not watched any of him in Portugal, but I thought he was just all fart shite. Like, just I think against us in the League Cup final, he dribbled the ball to play about 6 or 7 times, having got the better of the fullback. No for me.
Fair enough. Now, I had a couple of people saying we should focus on getting players away, but we're trying to be positive this episode. Let's talk about bringing players in. Darren Keenan said Sam Hoskins. I've done a quick Google search. He's an attacking midfielder for Northampton Town, and that's about the extent of what I know about him. Anybody know Sam Hoskins?
I've been aware of him because he's been touted. I saw he was touted with a move somewhere quite recently. I think, if I'm not right in saying, his goal scoring record's absolutely phenomenal has been phenomenal of late for Northampton Town. But it's League Two in England. You know, I'm remiss to get too excited at players scoring goals in League Two. Not to talk it down, because there'll be some good players in that league, definitely. But probably not for me. 30 years of age as well, and that's where he's at. I'd be hesitant about that one.
Yeah, fair.
He didn't half score goals though. 22 goals and 7 assists in 41 games. Did you say he's a midfielder as well? But
Yeah, I think McCurdy scored 22 goals in that league, did he not, the season before last? So
from centre forward though.
yeah, but is he?
He's played 296 games and scored 66 goals in total for Northampton. Done absolutely nothing before that.
Yeah, I'm probably with Liam on it. I think we've all seen with Harry McCurdy that the difference in standard of league, we need to be careful when we're kind of talking it up.
Yeah, Bristol Rovers.
I would say there's better options out
Bristol
there.
Rovers League One, did he?
Well, thank you for that one. Heidi Pessimist said Jason Kerr, not original, but now is his time with Wigan's relegation. And then he also said Dylan Levitt will not want to play Championship which could harm his Wales prospects. Get him confident again. There's a player to bring in the there's a player to bring creativity / attacking noose. So that's a fun way to put it. Noose. I don't know how that is a strange word. That is a strange word.
Ryan loves that word. Ryan absolutely loves that word.
Spoon it there, we attacking noose.
There we go. But I think we've talked about both of them before. So again, good suggestions. We definitely wouldn't say no to them, but we've covered them before. Regan Poole. I think we spoke about him last year before he's at Forest Green Rovers, if I'm not mistaken.
He was at Man United as a youngster. I remember at Man United as a youngster kind of coming through, and he was very, very. I think Man United maybe paid quite a big fee to get him from a Welsh club that escapes me which one, but he didn't ever cut it at Man United in the swing. He spent a lot of time in lower leagues in England. I haven't seen or heard of him much, so I don't really know what he's been doing since, but he certainly was at one point highlighted. Right back, centre back, maybe.
Yeah, just only go, Greg.
No, it's Lincoln City, not Ray.
He's Lincoln City. Left the club to play at a higher level, so really come to.
Well, we were speaking there. We've definitely spoke about him probably when he was at Rafe Rovers, but maybe that's expired if it's been over like 18 months or 2 years. Regan Hendry's a free agent, isn't he?
Just signed for Tranmere.
Oh, is he? Right, okay.
But who's that?
Yeah. Tranmere. He was on loan at them last season.
Right, okay.
That's disappointing. And then Kevin Wilson said Liam Morrison, Bayern B team, is expected to go out on loan. Do we take a punt on his potential? Liam Morrison, is he a centre back?
Yeah, he's an absolute unit of a laddie. Like I thought about putting him on the list, but then I thought Bayern Munich might want to send him out on loan to maybe the second tier in German football, the kind of cultural thing. Get to grips with the language. Pretty sure he knows the language already, but you know where I'm coming from. I don't think Hibs would be the number one priority to send a player like that on loan to, unfortunately. But I think he's a great player. Great, but I say great player, but he's got the potential to be a great player.
I don't think that's the market we need at centre back either. It looks like we're going to potentially have Will Fish back on loan. Rocky's still fairly inexperienced. I think we need another player. I know I went for older players, but I think like even in that sort of bracket that Liam had, the guy at Bolton, sort of mid to late 20s ranges, where Hibs probably need to be looking across the board actually for age-wise, but especially at centre-back, because there's going to be a huge gap in age there. Again, unfortunately, we experienced it with sort of Allen and Pochus, and we've still not sort of bridged that.
I think the cool thing about Liam Morrison is Ryan kind of touched it, and there's a really nice like synergy between the like first team and B team in German football. So he has had quite a lot of experience in training with the first team. I know as Scotland Abroad, the podcast or Twitter page, and they tweet quite. Pardon?
Sign Ryan Gold if you're going to be.
All right, let's not mention that name. That gives me PTSD. Played once really well against Elgin, and then just pushed it out every tackle for the rest of his life. But yeah, no. So I think he could be an interesting signing. So good shout, Kevin. Jude Mo 1875 said Lucas João.
He was on an evening news list. He was at Reading as well. While we're talking about Reading players, we just want to talk about Tom McIntyre as well, left-sided centre back. He's at Reading. Yeah. He's just been relegated. He's a player.
Can also play holding mid. I did look at him, but decided against it. But yeah, decent
Scottish, plays for Scotland. But Lucas João's a player who's scored goals pretty consistently in the English Championship and big physical. I mean, if we could make that happen, I would be very, very happy with that, to be honest. I know we're making jokes about him having played for Reading, but I think he would be good in this league.
Yeah. And then one of our favourites, Jack Kell, has sent in once we were linked with one that we were linked that stands out is Jake Brimmer stands out in a poor Melbourne Victory side. Very unrealistic target is Renier on loan from Real. Have poor loan spells in the top 5 leagues, so not impossible. Very
He was
unrealistic.
at Dortmund last season.
But a tall, quick powerhouse forward. So we like the ambition. We love ambition.
I love that.
Anyone know
That's
Jake
class.
Brimmer?
I actually read a wee bit about Brimmer. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I watched the A-League on a Saturday morning.
No, I've got a mate that watches A-League every single week, so I will tap into that.
I read a little bit, and Hibs, I didn't even recognise his name to see that we were linked to him last summer. I didn't recall it at all, but when I was Googling for this, it was a name that came up and seemed to be a standout. But on you go, Ryan.
Ryan, does your mate the league say that Garankuo was going to be an unbelievable signing for Hearts?
It's exactly the type of player that Hibs need to be going for. No wonder we're so far behind them.
You've probably got a point, to be fair, Euan. No, I'll ask him, though. I'll definitely ask him.
And then Jack Hill also said, not non-Hibs question, but he loves to get them in, so we'll answer it anyway. The Beatles or Oasis? I'm Beatles all day, most influential band of all time. Oasis are great, but I think the debate is forced. Just want to see what you boys think. I'm 100%. I don't know if I'd say, yeah, they're very influential. I love the Beatles, and the Beatles are magic. I don't have any gripes with Oasis, but they're just, I don't really understand the hype that they get. Being honest, I think they're good, not world-renowned. But on you go, Ryan, you started talking there.
Without the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, you wouldn't see the likes of quite a lot of bands, a la Oasis, Stone Roses, Verve type music. They kind of set the foundations for all these bands to come along and take inspiration from them. They're two of the greatest bands of all time.
It's hard, isn't it? It's like comparing sort of footballers from different generations and that, because like I think they're both.
It's really not that hard, mate.
But Beatles are phenomenal.
Phenomenal.
Like,
I personally prefer the Beatles. I was just trying to know called a fucking Scouse sympathiser by Greg.
I don't even like the Beatles, but I think
you just hate Oasis.
They're a better band. Like I wouldn't ever go and listen to the Beatles. I would listen to Oasis very occasionally. I wouldn't ever listen to the Beatles, but I would recognise the importance of them, as Ryan said. Like I don't think it's even close either.
I listen to them both quite regularly. Like, do rate them both highly, which I'm sure will make them both so happy.
Greg, are we a full house here? Are you Beatles over Oasis?
John Bjorkington. Next.
Well, there is that. Next one is from Finn, and he said Munaim El Idrissi, guy is a baller, might be sold as his French team got relegated to Ligue 2.
Ajaccio.
Pardon?
That's who he plays
yeah,
for. Ajaccio,
yeah. I've just had a quick look at him, and I think he looks like a baller. Like I'd take him. I like that shout. Any forward striker, any player that I would sign in Football Manager, I'm all for. I'd 100% snap him up on Football Manager.
He is decent, to be honest. He's quite quick. Gets him behind. Also, scout on him. So.
Goal outputs weren't great last year, but the struggling team, it's always going to be hard. 6 and 32, but
it was tough because they had a 35-year-old playing in front of them last season. So he found game time pretty hard to come by, mostly sub appearances, I believe.
See, just by bringing up French football, I was actually surprised that there wasn't any players really mentioned that were sort of in the French league about 4 years ago, because Greg was like...
To be honest, to be honest, I had a look, but nah.
Did you used to watch it on BT Sports, like on Saturday, Sunday night, or what?
Yeah, so I would watch it, but I don't know, I just feel like other than Lens, the total game's been ripped to bits. Like, they've had some season, to be fair. They've been unreal, but other than that, it's just pumped full of money.
Aye.
And then one, I'm just going to go around and get a yes or no for the next player. Kaiser Soze said, not a popular choice, I know, but I really think Nubly would be good. Liam, yes or no to Nubly?
I'm just going to say no, not based on what we've currently got.
Yeah.
I don't hate it as a shout, but no.
Greg?
No.
Right?
No.
Euan?
Yes.
All right.
He's so mediocre, it's unreal.
Let me ask a follow-up question. Euan, let me ask, if he didn't score a Maisie against Hibs, would you say yes? Because that's about the only useful thing I've seen out of him.
I would still say yes, but he would play him off the left with Euan through the middle. He is genuinely the best. He's better off the left-hand side. Well, Liam asked us this question a few days ago. Like, it would be a missing me to say no on the podcast because everyone else was. I said yes at the time. So Not for stupid money though. You know what I mean? Like that, it would be a no for the fee that Livy would.
I think they want $1 million. I think they want $1 million.
I'd offer Livy 50 grand and a couple of tables for their hospitality suite.
Oh,
that is a stinkery. My grand's conservatory looks better than that, by the way. I'm not even being dramatic.
See, look, if I was to present a hypothetical deal to you, right? 150 grand, Christian Doidge and Euan Henderson for Joel Newbley.
That's getting if you said that's just getting those two off the books. That's what you're after. If you'd said that straight up, obviously we would. I wouldn't pay 150k for that. I think that money could be better spent.
I would love to see David Martindale coach Euan Henderson. I just say that.
20 grand, a couple of power tools, a spanner, and a set of nails for David Martindale. There you go.
And an extra lock as well to keep the kids off the pitch during the summer.
Chucking a pair of overalls and there we go.
Just
bag of Charlie.
I think Liam's joke about the couple of tables goes over anyone's head. Just go and look at Livy's Twitter page for the day.
Yeah, really bad.
Wow.
Mental.
Looks
But
like
just to
singing
confirm, Jack Kell did stick up for himself and said, should add with the Renier shout, it's less about the player and more about the profile of player he would like to fill. He's obviously not going to come to Hibs. So fair enough, he doesn't actually think we're snapping him up, but he says that kind of archetype of player is the type he'd love to see at Hibs, which is a fair comment.
FIFA signings.
Yeah.
That's the sort of signing you make on Football Manager. You go in, hope like you've got no wage budget left, and you offer 0% wage on loan, and they accept it, and you're fucking buzzing.
Yeah. And then Dave Graham, he kind of went down the Greg route of things. I'm going to butcher some names, so apologies. Pronunciation isn't my strong point. I watch UFC now, so I'm getting a bit better at it, but I'm still not great. The first one is Koji Miyoshi, who is an attacking midfielder for Royal Antwerp, and Vincenzo Milico, and he's a left winger for Cagliari. Them as well. You don't pronounce all the letters. I just pronounce. You say what you see. It's like catchphrase. Panic. But anybody know anything about those two? Just off the basis of the fact they're top flights and pretty good leagues, I would assume wage wise. Are they not?
Cagliari.
Are they second? Really? I'm not followed Italian football for years.
They're relegated last year.
Right.
Yeah.
Wasn't that far off then. But Greg, you know anything about those two players?
No.
Anybody? But thank you, Dave, because that really does that hits the brief. We asked a question and you nailed it, mate. So well done. And he also mentioned
the first one, fucking Lewis Mayo.
I was about to say that. I was going to say that is funny because he mentioned such like random players and then Lewis Mayo.
Yeah, he was funny.
Dave was pressing pretty hard on Lewis Mayo, wasn't he?
He was determined that we'd sell him for $2 million in 3 years. Lewis
I respect David last year, but come on, son.
Hey.
Cagliari got promoted, by the way. I remember now. Very tired watching the Italian playoffs this season. Claudio Ranieri's the manager.
Aye. Who else came up then? So
good stuff. I quite like Cagliari.
Aye.
So I technically wasn't wrong then.
You weren't wrong.
Yeah, you were wrong.
Shit. Anyway, moving on. Kev Wilson, I knew I'd seen the name Jed Steer somewhere today. He said goalkeeper just released from Aston Villa, 30-year-old, might be too pricey wages, but would provide massive competition to Marshall. I think we've all kind of come to the conclusion we'd be happy with that. He also mentioned Adam Montgomery, don't like loaning players from the old firm clubs, but he's obviously not going to make the grade at Celtic. Try and do a loan plus option to buy deal. Liam, I think I saw you shake your head.
I've seen a wee bit of missing Johnson this season, but he didn't stand out in any of the games. I think he played against us at least twice, maybe 3 times. It'd be a pretty hard no for me on him, to be honest.
Just because he rolls his socks doesn't mean he's a football player.
Jeez.
I'd be more interested in taking Scales. I was taking somebody on left-footed centre half. I know Euan really doesn't like him. I don't know about the other 2 guys, but he would do for centre.
He's got a proper thing about Liam Scales.
Hates him. What do you think, Liam and Greg? Liam and Greg, take the floor.
I think he's looked much. I think he's looked much better since Goodwin's left, and you can't even deny it. You just can't. He has looked much better. Not playing alongside
the best captain
that went on loan. Absolutely.
You call him Rod Stewart?
He's gone back to Aberdeen anyway. Aberdeen are signing him permanently. That was it.
Fair then.
That's a good signing for them, I would say. I would say it's a good signing for them, to be honest.
Doesn't matter beside you if Josh O'Connor can turn you inside it. I'm reserving judgment on what I have seen. I thought he was pretty poor even though in the game they beat us at Pittodrie. In fact, no, that was Stuart who was stinking that night.
Actually, don't slander Stuart like that, because he was a phenomenal signing for Aberdeen. All right.
Yeah, that's the type of leader that every club in the Scottish top flight could deal with. If you know what you're talking about, that's the type of comment you would say.
Liam Scales played twice at Easter Road this season and should have been sent off in both of them. He was horrendous in both games. I'm sorry, like maybe just the other players they signed were better than him, and he's a centre back playing in a free. Like you can get away with murder. He was on the left side. Like honestly, I'm pretty happy that Aberdeen are signing him permanently. I really don't rate him at all.
But
we've just who loves a mediocre player.
But he played in Ireland, so.
Yeah.
And he's Irish.
Nothing to do with that. I just think I think he's a good player. Now that Stuart's left, I think you can see that he's not under as much pressure.
Can I just add to that? See, playing on a back three, it's not the easiest thing in the world. There can be big gaping spaces at times. If you get caught at the park, your fullback's not there, man. Like you can get caught out properly playing on either side of the back three easily. Greg and Liam will probably testify to that. Like there's spaces to be exposed.
No, look, absolutely, but like, just no for me, mate. No.
Yeah, take that, you and your bozo. We've got a few more players to get through. Alexandra Lauren Newman said Kieran O'Neill Dowell, an attacking midfielder who plays for the Badge. Quid to anybody who knows Kieran O'Neill Dowell. I forgot to Google as I go. Kieran.
Anybody that was Everton? No.
Sorry?
No, that's Kieran Dowell. He's with Rangers.
Signed for Rangers. Yeah.
Very good.
He is at Everton. I would have. Wait, no.
You've got the wrong guy.
He played for Everton. Kieran O'Neill Dowell previously played for Everton, where he had loan spells with Nottingham Forest, Sheffield United, Derby County, and Wigan Athletic.
Well, he's going to Rangers.
He's already signed for Rangers.
He already signed.
Right.
Yeah.
He won about 25 grand there.
Was actually very good at Forest, to be fair, and then didn't pop again really till Norwich City.
Next.
Next is Jack Clark. Sunderland.
No chance.
No chance.
There's no danger. No danger.
Burnley not signing him. I'm sure I've seen Burnley were signing him.
Burnley want to sign him. There's no danger.
Premier League, innit? So,
and then also Federico Barba, who plays for Serie B club Pisa as a central defender.
Don't mind it.
Don't mind it. Alexandra Lauren, you are hitting some random players here. I'm a big fan.
May as well just sign the Tramoni brothers as well. We were at Pisa. Sign them, Matteo and Lisandro Tramoni. Yeah.
I'm having to Google all these players. Fair play. And then she did list 3 goalkeepers, and being honest, I think she did get a bit overexcited. She said Angus Gunn, a Scotland international goalie, don't think we can afford him. Ben Wilson, probably the most realistic of the 3. He currently plays for Coventry, but had a very good season last year, if I'm not mistaken. So again, don't think we'd probably be able to get anywhere near him. And then also Bailey Peacock Farrell, who I'm sure we've all signed in Football Manager at some point, but again, I don't think we're able to afford him.
No, I've definitely not signed him.
Premier League.
Does he start for them though?
Still in the Premier League if he's on the bench. I don't know if he starts. Who is the starter?
Yeah, he's played loads of games at Leeds and Sheffield Wednesday, but I've not really heard of him since then, to be honest.
Aye. And then the final few ones, Ray Forsyth said Bobby Firmino, free agent, says he wants a new challenge. What could be more challenging than joining Hibs? Wages would be the challenge there, but apart from that, I'm all for it. I think
he'll be shy. Liam Scales is world class, but he'll be shy because he once played for Liverpool. So
I'm glad you know how it works here.
Lindsay Gibson said, if we are taking a punt on Adam Lafondra, never played in Scotland, why did we not get Stephen Fletcher last year? I think that's a fair challenge.
I wanted that big time last year, and it didn't happen. And I'll be honest, on a 1-year deal, if Lafondra wasn't already signed, I would have signed him. I'd have gone from this summer, but I don't think you want Fletcher and Lafondra as your 2-9 options this season. I think that ship sailed, to be honest. It's a shame.
Do you think there would have been any discussions between the club and the agent before Lafondra signed? Do you think he would have been a target that we might have went for? Based on the age profile and stuff like that. This season.
I think I think I don't think so. I don't think to be honest, I was surprised when we signed Lafondra because I didn't really. He wasn't my archetype of what I thought Lee Johnson wanted from a number 9.
Yeah.
I'm still surprised that we signed him. So yeah, I don't think Fletcher would have been one that would have been high up the list. I just thought it was really strange, like when we signed McGeady last summer. I know it's a bit of revisionism, but has McGeady got the kind of leadership qualities that you want in a 35, 36-year-old player? When you could have gone and got a guy like Stephen Fletcher, who really has, let's be honest, Stephen Fletcher's got every little bit of ability out of his body, really, over the course of his career. McGeady, at a lot of points during his career, has flattered to deceive, albeit he's had a very good career.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good statement.
That was a bit of a mic drop moment, so we're going to move on. Cannon Hannon, great name that, said, are we targeting any players or waiting for bargain basement freebies that can't get a club? I think we've definitely been guilty of that in the past. I don't think in recent times we've been too bad for that. I think last year we were quite good for getting players early and often.
You must be honest, the best part of £1 million of fucking development players, never mind free agents. Like,
yeah.
I've seen that come in. I don't know.
To be fair, two of the players we signed on the 1st of September last year, Nikola Kukarevich, Will Fish, they weren't bad.
Yeah.
I also think the importance will be kind of who we get out, what we get out, and what we're getting fees coming in, if any. Like Kel McGuinness, we've got nothing for him, so I think there'll be a wee bit of worth keeping an eye on who goes out and if we get any money.
Splash money on Euan already this window as well.
Yeah.
Whether it was budgeted for or whatever already, like the money's been spent, and I'm not just having a go at him for it, but like free agents, they're signing on fees and everything. There's still money involved in these transactions. Like I don't think it would be fair to accuse the club of sort of bargain shopping since the Gordons came in, really.
Mm-hmm.
And then one final question of the day comes in from Coach Pete Laird, and he says, who makes the jump from the development team to this summer to save us buying in some EFL budget guy? And then he did tout either McIntyre or Megwa. And I think realistically, McIntyre has been bumped back a bit in the pecking order just with us signing another left back. So I think it will probably be the two of them splitting minutes this year. Megwa, Greg, I'll come to you on that because I know you're a massive fan, especially the physicality that Megwa brings.
Yeah, it's definitely physical enough, I would say. Well, I don't think it would really be fair to chuck him into the first team at the moment, though. I think you probably need to allow him to go out on loan and get some experience. He was out on loan last season, end of last season, I believe. But yeah, I think he needs a full season on loan. 1 year too early, but definitely for next season, I think he'd be in there.
Has he played in the first team like a minute? Has he
played a friendly? Mind that one it was meant to be against, was it Edinburgh, and it got rescheduled to play against Wraith. He played about 45 minutes in that game. It doesn't mean anything, but he's beat. I've seen him for 45 minutes.
See, have I made this up, or was there a game maybe last season where like it felt like everyone was demanding that he should come in and play right back?
It was after the European tie against Dortmund, was it not? Did he not have a really impressive game then?
I think it was maybe Dundee United at home or something. I can't remember.
I don't think it was on the back of that, Harry.
Oh, fair.
Nah, it was. I think it was before that. After the pre-season game Ryan's talking about. I think we had injury issues at maybe right back. Or Cadden had lost form in the eyes of some.
Euan.
Based on the last podcast.
Hey, I was going to say,
apparently Harry McCurdy is a player and Chris Cadden's not a footballer. It would seem to be the consensus on the last podcast. I'll be
shots fired.
I'll be writing to Mr. Monin about that in due course. No, Megwa, I think, he's got a chance. Definitely got a chance. I think a loan would be better for him though.
Cadden's going to be out for a long time though, so I mean, it really depends on if we recruit for that position, doesn't it? But I think you're both right in what you're saying. He needs to go out and you get to a certain point in your development where you need to play every week. Playing once every 4 games or something is not good enough. It's not conducive. So a loan move would be good. You've seen that with a lot of the other guys already.
Harry, my answer to that question is 0.
Okay, fair enough. So yeah, and then with Falkirk being perennially stuck in the League One, we don't have to worry about poor performances from Lewis Miller, which is great. So hopefully he can keep on thriving, because that's the main reason he fell at the team. Jesus, you in that day, honestly, that's maybe the biggest tantrum, but that's a story for another time.
It was one message. It was literally one message, and it
And you
literally.
wrote him off.
No, all I
You did
said
enough
was
to him.
Lewis Miller is pony. That was that. I will own it. I'm glad to. It was four words, and it was a quick, harsh judgment. But maybe we'll see him in games that aren't against Celtic next season.
But
That's
guys,
5 words.
Euan had laced up the car with as much petrol as he could possibly find and was ready to drive all the way to Australia. The boy was livid. But anyway, guys, speaking of footballers, we have covered off over 20, potentially pushing 30 players that Hibs could potentially be looking at. We might sign a couple of them, we might get none of them. But hopefully, at least the types of profiles and stuff that we've indicated with McDermott coming in are the types of players that we can look to bring in. As mentioned last week, in terms of recording, we're only going to record in the coming weeks when we've got something to talk about. Obviously, we've got the excitement of the European tour that's going to start very soon. If it's in Andorra, we'll definitely be there, at least a couple of us. If it's in the Faroe Islands, then we'll see you in
Only
round
Ryan.
3. Yeah, Ryan's definitely there, but getting from London to Faroe Islands is a nightmare.
Ryan's stealing the ship.
Ryan's obsession with going to cold places is unfucking rivaled.
Do you know what? Like, see, before the draw was made, you all back me up in this. I said I want to go to the Faroe Islands.
See if he's maybe a shot of an unused submarine, you can get a go of Ryan.
Oh no. But guys, thanks so much as always for joining me, and we will catch you next time.
Bye.
Cheers.